Hey folks, Barry Young, Happy New Year. Whitestone Wealth Management here. This is our December 2014 economic update. And in this month's video, we'll discuss some of the economic events that occurred last month to give you some insight in what they mean for you as an investor. So please stay tuned at the end. I have to do that required disclosure statement. So December was a fickle month for markets, and that forced investors to weigh positive domestic fundamentals against fresh worries from abroad. So let's take a look at what happened last month. And what we saw was falling oil prices caused a lot of uncertainty as investors grappled with what low prices mean for the economy. And since recent highs in June, oil prices have fallen nearly 50%. While cheap oil and gasoline are great for American consumers who have no more money in their wallets around the holidays, it's bad news for the oil producers. Countries like Russia and Saudi Arabia, because they depend on oil revenues to balance their budgets. So American producers need higher oil prices to make oil projects economically feasible. And if prices stay too low for too long, it could really destabilize many petroleum-based economies and shut down some U.S. oil projects. Now, holiday shopping kicked off in November, and despite a rocky Black Friday weekend, retailers hope that cheap gas and an improving labor market will boost sales. Sales between November and December are projected to grow about 4%, which is the biggest increase since 2011. On the other hand, many stores offered large discounts, and that was to lure the shoppers in, which may cut into their profit margins. Now, the Commerce Department released another revised estimate of GDP, showing that the economy grew by a whopping 5% in the third quarter. And this is the fastest rate of growth ever we've seen since 2003. But even better, the biggest revision was in personal consumption, which is the most important driver of overall economic growth. So the question is, how much of that juice will be carried into future quarters? It's too soon to say for sure, but we hope that cheaper gas and a better job situation boosted the economy in the fourth quarter. So overall, 2014 was a really good year for the U.S. economy. And as the recovery moving into the fifth year, we finally regained all the jobs lost in the recession, and Americans started believing in the economy again. So, looking ahead, it's important to be cautious about markets in the coming weeks. And despite periods of volatility, markets did well in 2014, and a pullback is possible. But fundamentals are solid, and we expect positive consumer sentiment and improving labor market to contribute to gains in 2015. On the other hand, significant uncertainty remains about how weakening global demand, low oil prices, and interest rates will affect the U.S. economy. As always, we recommend focusing on your own investment strategies while allowing us to keep an eye on market conditions. So I hope you enjoyed watching our economic updates this year. We look forward to a very prosperous 2015 together. Happy New Year again. That's it for the December Educational Economic Update. If you have any questions or concerns, please give me a call at 954-491-1718. And we have some upcoming events that we'll put onto our website this year. We have some educational classes and Social Security classes. Once again, Barry Young here, Whitestone Wealth Management, signing off for December 2014. If you have any questions about anything in this update or you'd like some further discussion on your personal situation, again, give us a call, and I'd be happy to talk to you. So now I have to read that famous required disclosure after the close. So while we believe in the information in this report is reliable, we cannot guarantee its accuracy. Opinions expressed are subject to notice, without notice, and are not intended as investment advice or solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security. Please consult your financial professional before making any investment decision. Again, thank you. Signing off.